a teacher of Patanjali Yoga Sutras, and I am talking to you from Kolkata. Dear friends, today we are going to look at the 5 niyamas. These niyamas are very powerful ingredient of Ashtang Yoga. We had seen yesterday the 5 yamas. Yamas are those observances which are social in nature, which a yogi follows in society. But niyamas are essentially principles or observances which a yogi has to follow on a personal level. So, what are these niyamas? There are 5 of them again, just like the yamas. The first one is cleanliness or saucha. This is the first item on Patanjali's list, and this is of 2 types, the external type and the internal type. External cleanliness pertains to the body and consists in the modern world, as our commentators have put it, of cleaning with water and ingesting pure foodstuff, the right kind of healthy food. That is the cleanliness we are talking about. And in today's environment of COVID, when the country and the world is facing an onslaught of attack from the virus, it is very important that for our body's immunity to be on the higher side, cleanliness is maintained, both internal and external. External is of the body, which means keeping the body clean, eating healthy, right kind of food in preferably smaller quantities, and at the same time keeping the mind neat, clean and pure. When the mind is neat, clean and pure, that time the mind is in a state of power. The mind is in a state of high immunity. And in today's time, when immunity is critical for each one of us, a saucha becomes a very important personal observance for each and every individual today in our world. If you look at things, you will find that whatever is considered to be good in society or whatever is considered to be most desired is attained by intense concentration. And intense concentration can only happen from a mind which is pure, which is clear, and that is not blinded by addiction of any kind, addiction to alcohol, addiction to smoking. All these disturb the mind and weaken the mind. So, dear friends, internal cleanliness consists of purifying the mind of all contamination, and even things like jealousy, pride, vanity, hatred, attachment, they are examples of mental contamination and they have to be done away. Raja Bhoj, one of the commentators of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, has said that internal cleanliness can be accomplished by being benevolent, by being friendly towards one and all. And once when we are friendly towards one and all, our mind becomes pure, our mind becomes neat, clean, clear, and there is sattva, there is a lot of goodness in that mind. The second niyama, which Patanjali has spoken about after cleanliness, is santosha. Santosha means contentment. Santosha means not having interest in more than what one already has. Our immediate needs of life must be looked after and taken care of. True happiness comes, and not only true happiness, intense happiness comes with satisfaction, with contentment with whatever one has, and not with thinking with what will make one happy, not wondering what one should desire so that one can be happy. Even if there is some shortcoming, even if there is some lack, one must tell oneself that it is enough. And one must also ensure that one is leading a life of austerity, a life of tapas. Austerity, tapas, is one of the prime qualities by which one is able to control the senses, one is able to control the mind, regulate it, and bring down the impurities in the mind and the senses. So, one of the abilities of tapas is to withstand, is to tolerate hunger and thirst, and also to be able to handle the dualities of life, the opposites of life. Example, heat and coldness. And it also means to avoid useless talk, be controlled in our talk, be regulated in what we speak, how we speak, where we speak, what we speak, and to perform fasting. Once when we perform fasting, we are able to increase our capacity to handle hunger, and also fasting can include fasting of drinking water. So it is very important to know and understand that yoga is a practice where one requires to tolerate sufferings of the body, endure hardships, and by all that remain completely untouched. If there is lack of physical comfort in our life, even then we must be controlled. We must, however, be cautious that we are not putting a lot of hardship on the body because of the austerity and the penance which we are taking. But it should be only to a limit so that our shortcomings go away, our sins go away. It should not torture the body. So, tapas is done to discipline the body, discipline the mind, discipline the senses, and to remove all the past sins so that we become pure, we become clean, and by this we ensure that we are not affected by the sorrow which would have come in otherwise from the world outside. The fourth niyama is called Swa Adhyay. Swa Adhyay, as the name suggests, is about Swa, the self. Adhyay is study. So Swa Adhyay refers to studying, reading sacred scriptures, and whose subject matter is about liberation. Liberation from Prakriti, liberation from the entrappings of the mind, where the soul becomes free from this world, becomes completely independent, completely liberated. So that kind of literature should be studied and focused upon. So here Patanjali Yoga Sutras is one such study, because Patanjali Yoga Sutras is talking constantly about moksha, about liberation, about Kevalya. That is the last chapter of the sutras. And step by step, he takes us through the practice of samadhi, through the practice of Ashtang Yoga, and through the various siddhis possible till one is able to achieve moksha. So by studying a scripture like Patanjali Yoga Sutras, one can do a good amount of high quality swadhyay and raise the consciousness and reduce the impurities of tamas and rajas in the mind. Now, another item which is very important for yoga, which Patanjali has put in his Yoga Sutras in a very prominent way, is about devotion to God, is about surrendering to God. The term used here by him is Ishvara Pranidhana. He means that commit yourself to God, surrender yourself to God, go in a Sharanagati, do bhakti for him, so that when you do all things, you will get to know that this Ishvara is not a component, not a part of Prakriti. This Ishvara does not have any sanskaras, any karmic account, and any kleshas. That is because the concept of Ishvara is he has come direct into the creation. He is not going through Prakriti to become an Ishvara, like the other yogis who become the Purushas by going through Prakriti and liberating themselves from Prakriti. But just because Ishvara is above Prakriti and we are in Prakriti and we are trying to use methods of this Prakriti, sadhana of this Prakriti, to come out of Prakriti. So Patanjali says, by paying good deal of attention to Ishvara, he will help you to come out of Prakriti. He will ensure that the Samadhi is a perfect Samadhi, and that Ishvara, if you submit, offer all your activities to him, then remember, he is the original teacher. He will take care of your entire life. He will take care of all that is within you and around you. And that means the Mahat, the cosmic mind in which you are operating. He will take care of the intelligence which you have. He will take care of the ego which is driving all your actions. He will take care of the mind which is interacting with the world outside through the sense organs of perception and through the organs of action. He will take care of the tanmatras, which are the subtle powers, the subtle elements in the body. He will take care of your entire physical creation outside, the Panch Mahabhutas made up of Prithvi, Jal, Agni, Vayu and Akash. He will take care of your organs of action and organs of sensing. So if you are committed to Ishvara, if you are dedicated to Ishvara, then he takes care of everything. So Ishvara Pranidhana, commitment to Ishvara, is the most important part of all the yamas and all the niyamas which Patanjali has mentioned. And by cultivating them, cultivating the yamas and niyamas, we will find that we get lot of beneficial results. We get lot of minor siddhis. But the major benefit which comes for a yogi is coming from Ishvara Pranidhana, is coming because the ultimate goal of yoga is samadhi. And a perfect samadhi can only happen with Ishvara Pranidhana. Without perfect samadhi, a yogi cannot hope to go further ahead on the path of yoga to siddhis and to mukti, to kevalya, to liberation. So dear friends, here we see that what Patanjali had initially in the first chapter of Samadhi offered Ishvara devotion as an option to the yogi. Now in the second chapter of Sadhana, in Ashtang Yoga, he is saying you have no option but to adopt Ishvara Pranidhana, to be devoted to the Ishvara. And he says the simplest method of doing it is chant Om. So if you look at the methods which Patanjali has offered to move on the path of yoga, to achieve yoga, he says the first method is abhyas, regular practice, practice of concentration. The second method, he says, is vairagya, detachment, detach yourself from all the objects of this world. And the third, he says, is Ishvara Pranidhana, devote yourself to Ishvara. And Ishvara is represented by Om, so do Om chanting. Your consciousness will rise and you will find that all the diseases of the body and the mental health issues of the mind will disappear, and this will lead to a mind which is stable and calm. So Ishvara plays a very important role in Patanjali's Yoga Shastras, in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Patanjali also says that while you are trying to practice these yamas and niyamas, these disciplines of living in society and for your own personal good, personal upliftment on this path, there would be negative thoughts. There would be thoughts which will prevent you from doing these yamas and niyamas. So he says, whenever these thoughts come up and whenever the desires come which prevent you from doing yama and niyama, that time all you need to do is generate the opposite thought and hold that thought in your mind and give it some power of concentration. So you will find the negative thoughts which were preventing you from doing yama will weaken out, and you will have a strong positive thought which will support you in the direction of moving ahead with practicing yama and you will advance on the path of yoga. So you see, what essentially happens is, when we are getting a negative thought, it is coming from our chitta, it is coming from our mind because of past recordings, because of past sanskaras in the mind, in the chitta. But if we are artificially generating, intentionally generating the positive thought, a constructive thought, and holding it in our chitta, concentrating on it, then we are creating a new sanskara, a powerful sanskara, which is more powerful than the sanskara which was creating the negative thought. So the net result is that we have positivity in the mind, and this positivity helps us to continue doing our niyamas well. Now you see, as you keep on practicing this, putting in more of sattvic thoughts, positive thoughts, constructive thoughts, one realizes that the negative thoughts are essentially thoughts which are rajasic and tamasic in nature. Rajasic thoughts are those thoughts which are active, which dance around, which change very fast, very rapidly. And tamasic thoughts are those thoughts which are heavy thoughts, which are inactive thoughts, which have inertia, which have weight, which are not good in nature. So these thoughts are negative and they come from our chitta only. So when we produce more sattvic thoughts, we counter these rajasic and tamasic thoughts, and then the right sattvic qualities develop in us and they become a part of our chitta, and our chitta turns sattvic and more sattvic from being rajasic and tamasic. So the purpose of all human life is to turn our chitta sattvic. The more sattvic we make our chitta, the more better, the more pleasant, the more good, the more powerful will be our life, and the more close we will be to yoga. Now let us look at the various minor siddhis or siddhis which a mind develops on practicing these niyamas on a sustained basis. These niyamas are personal disciplines, but they are not like the vows of the yamas. So yamas are compulsory and they have to be done. They are kind of universal in nature. They have to be done under all circumstances by all people at all times, those who are practicing yoga, who are on the path of yoga. But here the niyamas, the rules are not all that stringent, and as we practice them, we find we develop certain benefits, certain minor siddhis in us. So the first one is, which comes out of cleanliness. When we follow saucha, when we keep our body clean by doing it on a sustained manner for a long period of time, we realize that our body is essentially a dirt, a garbage producing machine. It is constantly giving out through its various apertures things which are not good in taste, things which are smelly, things which are decaying. So we develop a distaste for our body. And once when we develop a distaste, a disliking for our body, we also do not like to be in close contact with others. So this is what a yogi feels about his body. And this is what is the outcome which comes in the yogi's mind by practicing saucha. So as he keeps on practicing saucha, as he keeps it clean, as it affects on his own body, and then he realizes that no matter how much he cleans his body, how much he washes it with water, how much of soaps and cleansing agents he uses, he is not getting a clean body. And the yogi's primary function, primary desire is to free the Purusha from the body, because the Purusha is stuck in the body. The soul is embodied, and that is why it needs liberation. It has to come out, it has to be free. So a yogi starts sort of not liking his body, and he starts having a distaste for other people's bodies also. But if a yogi is practicing purification of the mind, we had seen initially there were two kinds of saucha, there were two kinds of cleanliness. One was where the mind was being purified internally, and the other was where the mind was being purified externally. Externally is concerning the body, and it also concerns what we are eating outside, and internally concerns the inner mind. When we keep our inner mind pure, then we attain cheerfulness. We reach a state of ananda, there is intense happiness. And because the mind is clean, it is free from impurities of rajas and tamas, it has reached a high state of sattva. So the mind is able to concentrate now. The mind has got one-pointedness. And since the mind is one-pointed, it develops a higher sense of control over the sense organs. And because there is no clutter in the mind, there is clarity in the mind, there is lucidity in the mind, one is able to perceive the self, the Purusha, the Atma, cleanly and clearly now. Therefore, cleanliness of the mind is a critical factor on the path of yoga. It is essentially concerned with sattva, increasing the sattva. Sattva is another term for buddhi, intelligence, because buddhi is primarily sattva. As we have seen earlier, buddhi comes from Mool Prakriti and therefore is primarily sattvic, is primarily in the formless state, is primarily luminescent. It has goodness, it has divine properties. So, once when we clean the mind, we do Shuddhikaran of the mind, then from purification of this mind, cheerfulness comes, the mind becomes one-pointed, the mind reaches a higher level of concentration, the mind reaches a higher level of control over the senses, the indriyas are won over, mind becomes pure, focused, and now the rajas and tamas, which was coming in from the outer world through the sense organs, they also get subjugated, and the sattva in the mind now has increased to a substantial level, and the yogi is in a position to perceive the Atman, to see his mind with complete clarity. All this is attained by the cleanliness of the mind. Contentment, santosha. When one enters a state of contentment, santosha, then the highest state of happiness is again attained. Now, the state of happiness which is experienced is so high that the sattva in the chitta becomes undisturbed, and the absolutely uttam kind of sukha which is present in the essential nature of sattva is manifesting spontaneously now. And this innate, internal, intrinsic happiness of sattva is normally covered by tamas, but here it crosses over, and the pure internal happiness, the pure internal ananda comes out, and it is no longer dependent on external objects or external changing, fleeting objects, but it is an internal inbuilt feature of this mind. This mind is now tranquil, this mind is now completely contented, at peace, in a state of good amount of happiness. Then coming to the niyam of tapas. Tapas by itself, as we had seen earlier, is disciplining the body and the sense organs, the senses. So as we clean the senses and the mind, as we put it under certain pressure, as we bring it under fasting, as we control the amount of food and the water we take, as we control the amount of words we speak, we find that tapasya removes the impure covering over the mind. All that is tamasic and rajasic, which is covering the mind, which is covering the sattva in the mind like a shell. It gets broken up. It sort of dissolves, and the internal powers of the mind open up. The internal powers of the body open up, and siddhis start showing up. Mystical powers start showing up. One can have mystical powers like clairaudience, clairvoyance. So it has been mentioned here that through tapasya, it is possible to achieve siddhis. One can achieve siddhis through samadhi also. And one can achieve siddhis through other methods like tapasya as mentioned here, and also through mantra, through aushadhi, that means herbs, and because of birth, because of past sanskaras. But in the case of tapas, these austerities are done because of sheer willpower and because of celibacy, because of brahmacharya. So here the body is able to break through the layers of tamas and rajas covering the mind, and the siddhis start manifestations. You know, it has been said that people who follow the Gyan Marga, people who are Gyanis, for them, it becomes difficult to get siddhis. They may not get siddhis. But if somebody is practicing tapasya, then for him siddhis can be obtained. Siddhis are achievable for such a person. Swadhyaya. Swadhyaya is a practice where one studies the scriptures, one chants the mantras, one does Om chanting, one looks at ways by which liberation can be achieved. So here, people who are doing Swadhyaya, they find that rishis, celestial beings, perfected siddhas, and higher souls, they start appearing before them. They become visible and they guide them in their life. They assist them in their work. And a yogi then even gets to see the God, the deity he has been worshipping or he has been reading about in his Swadhyaya. So Swadhyaya becomes established when one is practicing the mantras, one is reading the shastras, and the mantra on whom one is focusing, the deity, the reigning deity of that mantra becomes active and manifests and shows himself to the yogi. And then he starts assisting the yogi, and it gives the yogi tremendous passion and faith, and he starts becoming more focused on his path. So this can only happen when one picks up one mantra and sticks on to that one mantra. It is not advisable to keep on changing mantras. It is also not advisable that once you pick on a mantra, not to chant it, not to practice it regularly. One must do it regularly for long periods without interruption. Then these mantras take on power and they start impacting the sadhaka's, the yogi's life, and bring about dramatic changes. Now the last niyama is Ishvara Pranidhana. Once when Ishvara Pranidhana is done, once when devotion to the Lord is done, then one finds that the samadhi becomes perfect. Now samadhi is the last stage of yoga. The whole exercise of yoga, the whole exercise of Ashtang, the whole purpose of Yoga Sutras, the whole work of Patanjali here, of Yoga Shastra, is about achieving samadhi. Now, if a samadhi by itself, the ultimate goal, if it is not perfect, then what is the purpose? What is the use? What is the benefit of doing all these practices, of going through all these shastras, learning these sutras, understanding these sutras? So, the point being made here is that Ishvara Pranidhana, devotion to Ishvara, is very, very important. And without devotion to Ishvara, the yogi can get small blessings, small siddhis because of the other yamas and niyamas which we have seen. But to get the ultimate boon, the ultimate blessing, the final state, it is very important that Ishvara Pranidhana is done. One reaches the state of the Ishvara. So, dear friends, this is all for today. And we saw that on the path of Ashtang Yoga, it is important that the yogi, the practitioner, follows the niyamas, the five niyamas. They are personal disciplines. They can give benefits to the yogi, but they also clean up all the rajas and the tamas. They help to purify the body and the mind. They provide contentment, and they increase the power of the senses, the power of the mind. They purify them both. They also bring us in close touch with powerful rishis, powerful yogis, siddhas, and they give us divine guidance. And at the same time, we get connected to Ishvara, who is the Lord, the complete Lord, who is above Prakriti, above Purusha. And then we find this Lord, because we are connected to Him with complete bhakti, with the power of consistent, constant Om chanting. We find that this Ishvara, who is our Adi Guru, an ancient Guru, imparts us all his knowledge, because he has the complete knowledge of all that is happening in this creation. So that knowledge starts coming to us through intuition, through pragya, and it gives us the power of discernment. It gives us the power of wisdom. With this power, we are able to distinguish between the mind and the soul, between the chitta and the purusha, and thus it helps us to acquire the right kind of knowledge, complete knowledge, by which we can discriminate the mind and the soul, the chitta and the purusha, and free ourselves from mind, from prakriti. The mind now dissolves into the primordial form of prakriti, and the soul is completely free, reaches a state of kevalya, reaches a state of liberation. So friends, niyamas play a vital role. Thank you so much for being here, for listening to this talk. I'm sure you have gained from this talk. The purpose of this series of talks is to ensure that we teach the ancient methodology of Yoga Sutras to achieve permanent happiness in our life, a complete freedom from sorrow. We wish and pray that you will get it and you will impart it to your family members, to members of your society, to the people of your country, and to the people of this world at large. Thanking you and praying for your permanent happiness. This is Sanjay Mansukhani, a teacher of Patanjali Yoga Sutras, signing off. Thank you and God bless you. Namaskar.